I use this vintage library table in my office as an office desk. I love the size, I love the style, but it's the last piece standing between me and a completely finished space. And the reason for that is because I have no idea what I want to do with it. Do I restain it and keep it? Hey y'all, Kirsten from the future here. I know what you're probably thinking. The title of this video says Beginner's Guide to a High Gloss Paint Finish. And that's exactly what you're going to get in this video, so don't click away.
First step in the transformation is to fix the crack that is at the top of this desk. It goes all the way across the entire thing. There's also a broken piece on the shelf that is down below. So that's what we'll repair first. We'll go ahead, grab some wood glue and squeeze that into the crack really well, making sure we get glue, substantial amount of glue on both sides of the piece, and then wipe off any of the excess. I'm going to go ahead and clamp it at the seam to keep it flat and use ratchet straps to hold the entire thing together to squeeze that seam nice and tight.
So yes, it's getting painted and I'm super excited about this technique. I've been wanting to do it for quite some time and I've been doing some research. Now, most people use fine paints of Europe in an oil-based paint, and that gives you that nice mirror-like finish. But I've heard rumors and different things around the internet of people using Benjamin Moore's Advanced line in a high gloss. And since that is a water-based paint, and I'm much more familiar with working with the Advanced line, to begin with, that's the route we're going to take today. All right, let me show you what the piece looks like after I started stripping it a little bit. I was taking off that dark walnut stain, and you'll see quickly why I came to the conclusion that I did, that it just needed to be painted.
You can see this color is just, it's too orange. It's too, I mean, it looks lighter on camera, but yeah, it just doesn't play well with the buffet back there. And it's way too busy of a pattern. So I'm glad I'm going with my gut and painting it.
Okay, we're going to glue up the center of this table. And this is where it was seamed together before. But from my understanding, they used water soluble glue. So, you know, it over time, that doesn't last. So, and I looked up a couple YouTube tutorials on a couple different ways of clamping it if you don't have clamps. So we'll see if it works. Okay, the YouTube tutorial said take a piece of wood like this. So since it has one screw here, it pivots. So when you hit this with, I'll go the opposite direction. You see the glue squeezing out? It actually works. All right, just gonna clean up the glue with a damp rag. And then I'm going to put these blocks on here. Hopefully this will help that crack stay level. There we go. We'll see if this works. I mean, that's pretty darn tight. That's not moving anywhere. So we'll see tomorrow if it worked.
The next morning, I released those clamps. And it looks pretty good. We'll just take it outside and sand it. The paper that I had underneath it stuck to the glue, but we'll see after sanding what it looks like. And it looks pretty good. You can still see some separation at the ends, but everywhere else looks pretty good. So here is the process for painting a high gloss finish from my research. You're going to do your pairs, your grain fill, sand, prime, grain fill again, sand, spot putty, sand, prime, sand. Then we can get into paint, sanding between each of the 3 coats of paint. So let's see if that's the process I stick with. We start with grain filling. I took some wood filler and just mixed it with water and got it to a slurry consistency so that it would fill in all of the grain with a paintbrush. I'm using a chip brush and I'm going in both directions to make sure against the grain and with the grain so that it fills in every nook and cranny. There was also a big divot at the end, so I'm just filling that with straight wood filler. And then we sand. Using 220 grit sandpaper, we're going to sand it down so that the wood filler is just, filling in where the grain is. Then we can prime. I'm using a Bin shellac base primer and I'm using a 4-inch foam roller to apply it. We'll let that dry, sand, and grain fill again. But this time I use joint compound because it's a much thinner consistency, or smoother, I should say, smaller granules. So I'm hoping this will fill into the extra fine grain. And then we have to sand that off again. And then prime for the second coat. You may be wondering, why on earth are you painting this solid oak desk? And that is because I just feel it is going to fit the best in my space. It needed to be a lighter, brighter color. The darker color was just too heavy and bulky in the space. While that primer dried, I started putting up a temporary spray booth. I wrapped plastic around a pop-up tent, and now I'm just applying a zipper, actually, to the plastic so that it will, allow me to go in and out and bring the piece in and out, but also seal it up nicely so no dust or bugs or whatever else can get into the booth and affect the finish of the paint. Once you press it on with some Velcro, you cut it with a X-Acto knife so that you can go ahead and make it through. So I added a fan also to extract as much dust as possible. Here's what it looks like after the second coat of primer. I think I'm still going to have a crack over there. I got to get a light out to see any of the imperfections. But this didn't have primer on the full thing because I ran out, so I had to go get some more. So the bottom actually only has 1 coat of primer on it. But we're going to let this dry and then we'll sand again. And as you can see, using the electric sander was just taking too much of the primer off. So we're going down to bare wood again, and that's not what we want. So we prime again. Okay, here's the 3rd coat of primer. We're not there yet. We're going to need another coat. And it's definitely very textured. Is this ever going to get done? So the best way that I have found to get these legs dead flat, we don't want them smooth, like they're super smooth to touch. But once I look in the sunlight and I put my safety glasses on me. Safety glasses have readers in them, so I'm going to link these in the description. They have been a godsend because then I can look and see everywhere that needs to be filled. Now I could continue to smooth it right dry, but then, I could continue to sand this completely flat to where you don't see any of these little pit marks. But the problem is that then I'll be going down to raw wood again, and then we're just repeating that process over and over again. So what I found the best way to do it is to sand it one by hand, has been working the best. And then take your spot putty and then smooth that in there, sand it down again, and it's coming out glass smooth. And that's what we want. We want the primer version to be glass smooth before we put the paint on top. It is tedious. It's extremely tedious. But, and I'm in the phase where I'm like, is this actually worth it?
but I think it's going to be. I'm feeling optimistic at this point. A few hours ago, I was like, what am I thinking? Let me just slap some paint on here and move on. But yeah, I'm optimistic at this point because it's getting nice and smooth.
Let's talk about the booth for a minute. So this looks completely different than when I showed you last because, well, I messed up. I only bought one zipper and it made it extremely difficult to get that piece of furniture all the way in there with just the one zipper. So I had to cut another slit in the plastic and then add this flap over the top, and then that'll suction on there and seal everything off. Now, the other thing is that, and this is part of the reason why I was so frustrated, I got so behind yesterday, all because putting in the fan and cutting all the plastic, and I kept running out of plastic, and they make it so stinking simple on the internet. Okay, all the tutorials I looked up they made it look so stinking simple. So I'm just here to be real with you today. Okay, this is not as simple as it looks. Yes, we're just wrapping plastic around there, but then cutting the fan out and getting the fan to stick to plastic, and the plastic is like all over the place. It's a little harder than what you think. I thought, oh, I'd get this put up in like 30 minutes and be all good to go. And it was, 3 hours later, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm still working on a paint booth. Is this actually worth it? I hope it is. I really do. I hope I have some sort of system going on here that works.
So we rolled the desk in, and I'm going to spray this coat of primer on to see if we don't get as much texture, if it comes out a little smoother.
After sanding and filling and sanding some more, and then I went back in with the spot putty because the grain filler just wasn't filling enough. I still don't know if the crack is going to be covered. This is turning out to be, I knew it was going to be a difficult experiment, but we're getting there. That's all I can say. We're getting there. So I'm out of primer, so I'm off to Lowe's to go get some more primer, and then we'll come back and wheel it in the booth.
Put on another coat of primer, and hey, guess what else we're going to do? Sand again. Yay! Now this time I got some filler primer at Lowe's when I was there. It's found in the automotive section, but it's used to fill in fine cracks.
All right, I've got some 400 grit sandpaper. Get my mask on, and we're gonna sand again.
And after 2 cans of the bin primer, 3 cans of the filler primer, and a gazillion pieces of sandpaper,
right,
we're ready to paint.
Let's get ready for paint. You ready to see the color? It may surprise you. Ready? It's a super, super light pink, very close to the other pieces in the room. And this is Benjamin Moore Advance in the high gloss. But I think it's going to be super sophisticated and pretty.
And then we wheel it into the booth again, and I thinned it just slightly, like 10% with water in the sprayer, and put on my first coat.
All right, now we wait 16 hours before we can sand. Yay! So it'll sit in here all night and we'll check back in the morning.
Well, it's the next morning, and let's see what we're working with. I think, well, so far it looks pretty good. There were some drips that happened as it sat for a minute, and I had to take a roller to, that's why you see those darker sections, as well as I see on the edge it kind of rolled off. So maybe I thinned the paint just a little bit too much. So let's pull it out of the booth and see what it looks like in the sun.
So overall, I think it looks pretty good. I would show you, it's just that I have to bring it out in the sunlight to be able to even see the imperfections.
and it's just too bright. So you're not gonna be able to see them on camera. I've tried to film it and you just can't see the imperfections. But good news, you can't see the seams on the top, which is awesome. Now, there were some imperfections in that spot putty that I put on and that I couldn't see before I painted it, and now you can. Because like I said, that high gloss is going to highlight everything. And then, of course, where all those drips were, and I had to come back with a roller and touch up. It's not so great. So I'm sanding again because I love sanding so much. So let me go sand it. I'm actually going to fill those couple sections in that have the imperfections in the spot Bondo. Touch up with just a little bit of the filler primer again. Sand it, and then we can just paint over it again. I think it'll be okay.
I originally scheduled out 3 days to complete this project, and well, I should have known there would be something that didn't go right? Between running out of primer, and I'm a good 30 minutes or more to Lowe's, so that's where I get my primer. Trying to fill that crack on the top, oh my word, that has been really what's really delayed things a lot. And then the fact that I put the first coat of paint on and I thinned it just a little bit too much. It did nice, and it was nice and smooth, but there were just so many runs. So the next time I didn't thin it quite as much, and I didn't get as many drips. So let's head out, see what we have going on, and see how long today's going to be. I pulled it out of the booth, and from a distance it looks fabulous, but when you get up close, which again I don't think you can see on camera, you can see a little bit because I put it on thicker. The second coat, it has texture, so we're gonna have to sand and do another coat of paint that's just slightly thinner.
Okay, I just figured something out. I don't know, I knew this, but I didn't know this. I've not really done this before. I haven't had to do this much sanding or to get that glossy of a finish. But did you know that if you wet sanded, it actually works a lot better with the higher grit sandpaper? Gosh, why did it didn't dawn on me till just a few minutes ago. I just used my Mr. bottle and the 600 grit sandpaper, and it's coming off super smooth and dead flat like you're supposed to have. And when they mean dead, I say she. The tutorial that I watched that said dead flat, I didn't quite understand what she meant, but now I do. And that is when you go and you sand, you can see spots that are dull and you see spots that are shiny. You want to get all the way till it's completely dead flat, like no shiny spots. So because those shiny spots mean those are divots, the dull spots would be the higher spots, and that means there's still depth there and there's going to be texture. So we want to get super smooth, glass smooth, right? For that mirror like finish. All right, I'm going to wheel it in for the third and final coat. Oh my goodness, the wet sanding, night and day. I wish I had just thought of it between the first two coats, but I didn't. And oh well. Because really what happened, I don't know if you can see the little red dots. I tried the sander first and it was just gumming up and it pitted it in several places. So I had to fill those in. But oh my goodness. So hopefully this is the last coat. Hopefully I thinned it to the right consistency. And I know there's a certain cup that you can get to help with that, but I don't have one. Anyhow, so hopefully this is it because I'm done. I'm done with this piece and I'm ready to get this video done. Came out, I brought the piece out of the booth and look what I got. I got a drip there. Almost every leg basically has drips. Can you see them? Also, I think it's my sprayer. In order to get the paint thin enough to lay flat, it wants to run. So, yeah, almost every leg. You probably can't see that one. It's hard to see in the sunlight. Now, I will say the top. Let's see if I can get this way. But can you see the glare on the top? Isn't that pretty? So I'm going to try to sand out those drips and then touch it up, maybe with a brush. All right, we're going to call it and do all the finishing touches. We're going to start with the knobs by getting out my little butterfly mold, putting in some clay, and then we'll just go ahead and glue that onto the knob and let that dry. Then we'll take some rub and buff, and I like to take the gold leaf and the antique gold and mix them together. It just turns, one is a little too brassy and one's too not gross, but dingy looking. So together they just make a perfect, nice, soft gold. And we'll just rub that all over the entire and let that dry for a few minutes. So while that's drying, we'll go ahead and get rid of those drips that are on the legs. And what I'm doing is taking a razor blade and just getting the bulk of the drip off. And then I'll wet sand with 600 grit sandpaper and just buff that out. Then we'll bring it inside to touch it up. So I'm going to put it in place so that I don't touch any of that wet paint. In the meantime, I'm going to take off the plastic from the drawer so that we can put that in place. Yes, you saw that right. Can you believe? Yes, I took a chunk out of the leg. Oh, it's so frustrating. So I'm going to go ahead and put the knobs in place and then apply some, it's called Big Mama's Butter from Dixie Belle, but it's an orange scented salve that really conditions the wood. So that's what I'm putting on the sides and insides of all the drawer, and gently put it into place. Then I took an artist brush that has really soft bristles, and I'm just touching up where I sanded and nowhere else, just where I sanded.
Okay, let's recap, and then I'll show you the big reveal. So, am I happy that I painted it? Absolutely. It looks absolutely beautiful in the space. I mean, look at just that right there. Oh, it's so pretty. There are many imperfections, but I'm okay with it. Is it perfect? No. But is it okay for my space? Yes, it is. Was it a great learning experiment? Absolutely. At first I thought, oh goodness, maybe I took too much of a challenge with the grain and whatnot. All the deep grain and then of course the repairs. Maybe I took on too much to learn on, but looking back on that, all those things were adversities that I learned from. So then I can take that into the next piece that I try to do with this finish. But in the end, what I would say is my biggest fault is I don't have the proper equipment. So I have a beginner sprayer and it does not atomize the paint like a professional sprayer does. It just doesn't do the quality finish that I think is really needed for this type of paint finish. Another thing that I would do differently is I would do it in a more controlled environment. We were getting temperatures really low in the nighttime, down into the 50s, which is taking much longer for the paint to cure, but also that is going to interfere with how it's laying as well. It's not laying as flat and as nice as you need to. So with my sprayer, I can do a satin finish and it looked beautiful. But with this high gloss, like I said, it shows the slightest little imperfection. So that's really hard. You can still kind of see the cracks on the top, but we're just going to live with it. I don't know what else I could have done. I'll do some more research. I just don't know. It keeps it. I think it has to do with the wood expanding and contracting, and it has to do with temperature, because I'll see it one moment and then later in the day I don't see it at all. But overall, I am absolutely ecstatic about it. So let's recap what the process actually was. I know in filming it, it gets a little confusing. Even me, as I was trying to edit it, I couldn't figure out, was this the first time I primed or the 15th time that I primed? I can't tell. But here's the general process of what I did. I grain filled, and we're just gonna go ahead and add in that after every one of these steps is a sanding, okay? So we grain filled, we primed, we grain filled again, we primed again, spot filled, primed again, did the filler primer 2 times, then we went in for the final paint. Then we painted 3 coats, sanding in between, of course. I went up to 600 grit sandpaper with the last sanding that I did, and that was wet sanded. And then I put on that 3rd coat. Would I do the spray booth again? Yes, I absolutely would. Would I do some things differently? Yeah, I'd buy 2 zippers. That's what I would do. As well as I would make sure I had enough visqueen of the heavier plastic before I started, because I had like a thin plastic on parts of it. And that's where trying to put that fan in was like, the thinner plastic is no bueno. So another tip, buy the heavier gauged plastic. Don't buy the thin drop cloth plastic that's like 1 mil. I'll put a little picture up here and a link in the description of the type of plastic that you really should get to do your portable spray booth. There is something that I can do to finish this out, but I have to do a little more research. But from what I understand, you could wet sand with 1,000 grit sandpaper, then go to 3,000 grit sandpaper and wet sand, and then come back with a buffing compound and a buffer. It's like a wool buffer that buffs it all out, and you'll get that super, super glossy finish. But when I looked into it, the compound was really expensive, and it came in a large bottle, and I was like, I'm never going to use that much. So I'm only going to do this a couple of times, maybe in my house. So there's no reason for me to buy a gigantic, it was like $60 or so of just buffing compound. So I knew I would never use it again. So there was really no need to pick that up. And the filler primer was a godsend. That was absolutely wonderful for filling in those faint imperfections. I see why automotives do that.
So without further ado, here is the final reveal. Like most projects, this one had its fair share of twists and turns, but every single one was worth it. If you're looking to level up your furniture painting skills, I hope these tips in this video give you the confidence to try this high gloss finish on your own. And if you're still watching here, thank you. Truly, your support and encouragement mean the world to me, and it's what keeps me creating and sharing these projects with you every week. Oh, and if that bench in the background caught your eye, you'll love the transformation in this video right here. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoy learning new DIY techniques and finding inspiration for your own home. It will notify you so you don't miss what's coming next. Bye-bye, y'all. Hope you have an incredibly blessed day. See you in the next one.